Confessions of a Stay-at-Home Mom, and this is a tutorial on homemade meatballs, and it's a lot simpler than you think. You're going to start with 1 pound of ground beef. Now if you want to double the batch, you go up to 2 pounds, you go up to 3 pounds. 1 pound of ground beef is going to get you 10 to 12 fair-sized meatballs. I like to have a 80-20 or 85-15 proportion of ground beef. That's fat to meat. Anything really leaner than that, you're going to lose some flavor, and anything under 80 is just kind of gets gross and gristly. You can get ground beef at your local grocery store. If you can get local, natural, pasture-raised, grass-fed beef, I highly recommend it. Tonight I'm using ground beef from Lindenhof Farm, which is local, which is the next county over in Lancaster, PA, and they're at a lot of local farmers markets. I love all of their meat products, so I'm using their ground beef tonight. You start with a pound of ground beef, and to that you're going to add about half a cup of seasoned breadcrumbs. I'm eyeing it up here, I'm just kind of used to the proportions. So half a cup of seasoned breadcrumbs, and add onion salt. Now if you're trying to watch your salt intake, you can use onion powder and maybe a dash of salt, but I have always just used onion salt, and I'm going to use about 1 to 2 teaspoons, that's to your liking. Next I'm going to add parsley flakes. Now you could add fresh parsley, I've always used dried parsley flakes, and I'm going to again use about a tablespoon. To that, I've just recently started doing this, I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of grated Parmesan cheese and about a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon, depending on your palate, of black ground pepper. Now that you have all the dry ingredients in with the ground beef, I'm going to add 1 egg, 1 large egg, and this is the fun part. You're going to have to get your hands dirty. I've taken my rings off, and you just kind of have to get your mind around the fact that you're going to be touching ground beef. So I'm just going to work it with my hands. I kind of use a kneading motion, like the way you might knead bread. So once the ingredients are combined, you're going to want it to look kind of like that. From there you can kind of adjust flavorings or seasonings. If it seems like it's still too meaty, you can add maybe a little bit more breadcrumbs, which I'm going to do now. I think a lot of that will depend on the kind of meat you use compared to the fat. So an 85-15 ground beef might need little tweaks compared to the 80-20 ground beef. Okay, now that it's really well combined, I have my baking sheet here all ready to go. I suggest spraying your pan if you're going to use it. Tonight I didn't have any spray, so I am using parchment paper. And you're just going to take about maybe a 1/4 cup of meat, of the meatball mixture, and you're going to roll them and give them a little bit of room. You don't want them to be right on top of one another, and you want to make sure they're all about the same size so that they cook evenly. Now with ground beef, I know a lot of people, when they make meatballs, use different kinds of meat. They might use a mixture that you can get, a meatball mixture, usually at the deli, and that's usually some sort of mixture of ground beef, veal, and pork, or you might just use ground beef and ground pork. And I encourage you to try those things. I've used them in the past and I think they taste great. I usually just like to keep it simple, and I just use plain ground beef. But do what you want to do if you're looking to try different kinds of flavors. I've used a dash of Worcestershire sauce. Try teriyaki sauce. There's lots of different ways you can tweak this. So there we've got our 10 meatballs. I'm going to take a second and wash my hands, and then we're going to go put them in the oven. Okay, I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and I'm going to cook the meatballs in the preheated oven at 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. The meatballs have been cooking for a little over 20 minutes. I suggest checking in on them after 20 minutes in case they start to cook too much in your oven. It might take up to 25 or even 30 minutes depending on how your oven works and the kind of meat you used and how big you made the meatballs. You'll know that they're done when they start to brown on the tops, and then they're finished. If you're making your meatballs to go with spaghetti and meatballs, I highly recommend letting them simmer in the tomato sauce about an hour or so before the meal. letting them simmer in the sauce helps infuse flavor both in the meatballs and the sauce, and you can't go wrong that way. So there you have it, homemade meatballs. I hope you go try it for yourself sometime, that you'll see it's not nearly as hard as you think, and I hope